Hello everybody, this is Vertigris again. Today we'll be looking at Halls of Valor, a new dungeon introduced in World of Warcraft Legion. This video will be from the perspective of a Vengeance Demon Hunter as the tank. The group also had 2 Hunters, 1 Disc Priest, and a Ret Paladin. In this video, just as I did with Blackrook Hold, I will be looking at the different bosses in this dungeon, as well as going over some of their abilities that tanks should watch out for, as well as my moment-to-moment gameplay as the Vengeance Demon Hunter. The first boss we will be looking at will be Himdall, and from a tank's perspective, there's not a whole lot you need to worry about, and even his damage numbers make him feel actually more like a mini-boss than an actual boss of his own right. As a tank, there are a few things that you need to look out for. The first will be Bloodletting Sweep. This is an ability Himdall casts pretty much without warning or telegraph, and what it does is a frontal cone of damage that also will reduce healing received. So while tanking him, just make sure you face him away from the group. The next ability you're going to want to avoid is the Dancing Blades, which you can see right now. They're just zones that you don't want to stand in. They're really easy to avoid, and they shouldn't be an issue. The third ability that you're going to need to be looking out for is when he calls his drakes. They will lay down a patch of electricity in one of the 2 lanes, and we're just going to want to move to a different lane or in the middle of the 2 of them and just get through it. It's very easily telegraphed, kind of like a Valiona and Thoralion encounter. You can see it coming in the back lane right now, and so we just stayed put. As always with the Demon Hunter, you want to be able to manage your pain and roll your cooldowns, keeping 1 charge on cooldown for both Demon Spikes and Infernal Leap at all times, and Soul Healing when you need it. Remember that you do have that reduced healing debuff sometimes, and it's important to pay attention to that so you maximize the healing received from your Soul Cleave. All in all, it's a fairly simple fight. Most groups shouldn't have any issues with it, and honestly it feels more like trash than it does an actual boss. An important thing to note though with all of these dungeons is that because it does scale you to 110 as soon as you zone in, it's important to make sure you check your talents and make sure that you've spec'd into everything you can spec into. You'll notice right now that I forgot on this boss, but obviously it didn't matter. The second boss we'll be looking at is Hirja. Again, she's a fairly simple encounter and will be active as soon as you kill the 2 trash mobs in her room. They will both be empowering her, causing her to do different things with some of her abilities. As a tank, you're going to want to stay away from people who have the glowing circle around them, as it will do damage to everyone around them. And also, the Dungeon Journal says you don't want to be in front of her when she casts Shield of Light, which is that knockback. However, she seems to turn with you as she's casting it, so it's fairly unavoidable. We also will tank her over by this electric guy, because he will empower her Eye of the Storm ability. The other ability that she can cast is Sanctify, which will cause balls of holy light to leash out from her, and that is a lot harder to avoid, which is why I tank him over here. In Eye of the Storm, she'll create this bubble on the ground, and it reduces all the damage you take from this ability by 50%. Granted, she is empowered, so she's doing more damage overall from this ability, but it seems a lot safer than tanking her with the Holy Light and getting Sanctify into the group. As always, you're going to be rolling your cooldowns, and when she Shields of Light, you're going to want to Infernal Strike in, so definitely make sure you have a charge of that off cooldown. Aside from avoiding the rest of the members in your group when they're exploding with holy damage, this is a fairly simple tank and spank fight, just like the first one, and most groups, again, shouldn't have very many problems with this one. In my experience, it seems that Halls of Valor seems to be the best tuned of the dungeons so far. There are some trash packs that don't seem to be quite on par with the rest of the dungeon, either being able to chain easily into other groups or just letting out a lot of damage on their own. Because of this, it's often a good idea to use CC when you can. However, most groups don't seem to want to do that for whatever reason. Maybe it's just the change in dungeons and people are used to face rolling everything on live, but right here, especially as a Demon Hunter, where you feel particularly squishy, some of these fights will require a lot more effort on your part to stay alive. The third boss we'll be looking at is Fenrir. He comes with kind of a 2-phase encounter. Once where you find him in his area to get him down to a little bit lower health. I believe it's about 60%, and then he'll run away. After this, you go back to his cave, and the second part of his fight starts. The second phase of this fight is fairly chaotic, but that seems to be by design. Hopefully you'll have cleared out this area of all the trash packs, because you're going to need room to move around for when he casts Scented Blood. It's a 3-second cast and causes Fenrir to mark a target who will have to kite him away. Every 2 seconds of this chase, Fenrir's melee attack damage increases by 50%. That's why you want that extra room. He will also have an ability called Ravenous Leap. When he casts this, he will leap to a target and do damage to all enemies within 10 yards and then cause a bleed effect on them. So it's good to have a pretty loose spread for your group so that you can mitigate some of this damage. Casters will also need to worry about Unnerving Howl, which will interrupt any spell casting currently happening. The last thing that we're going to need to worry about during this fight is Claw Frenzy. If you have melee DPS in your group, they should help split this damage with the tank. It will do physical damage split between all enemies within 12 yards of the target. With these being his only abilities, the only other issue that you might encounter is if you didn't clear out enough of the trash before him. Because if that's the case, then you'll be picking up those in addition to Fenrir, and that increased damage will make it so you really need to pay attention to your cooldowns, and hopefully have your DPS switch to the smaller adds and wipe them out first. If that does happen, you can also use your Infernal Strike to get away from all of the adds to buy your healer a little bit of time to heal you up. Assuming that you properly prepared for Fenrir, the fight should be fairly simple and is very easy to manage. The next fight that we'll be looking at is God King Skovald. The God King does have an automatic wipe ability, and this is the main thing that we're going to need to look out for. This is also why we have the shield. Whoever picks it up will be able to activate the shield to prevent all damage done to the group standing behind the shield. We're going to want to activate the shield when he gets to about 198, somewhere in there, or starts casting Ragnarok. You'll notice our Ret Paladin was a little bit slow to activate, but we only lost one of the hunters, and so the rest of the fight seemed to manage okay. The other ability that we're going to need to look out for is his Fellblaze Rush. This will cause him to dash towards a target and then leave some fire on the ground. It's a splash effect, so you're going to want to have a little bit of a loose spread if possible. The last ability that a tank might need to worry about is Savage Blade, in which he'll lash out at his current target, inflicting a lot of physical damage, and applies Ragged Slash, which is a dot that will persist unless you've used active mitigation. As always, as a Demon Hunter, you have a lot of active mitigation abilities to be able to use, and so if you're rolling your cooldowns properly and managing your pain effectively, this ability is not something that you should really need to worry about. As long as your entire group is paying attention to the Aegis and the Ragnarok and casting it properly and getting behind him when he picks up the Aegis, this is a fairly simple tank and spank, and although a little bit long and repetitive, is an easy fight with simple mechanics. The final boss of Halls of Valor is Odin, and while we're not going to kill Odin, we're going to bring him down to probably about 75% of his health. During this fight, one of the things that you're going to want to look out for is when he grips all of your party in towards him and then has a ring of light around him. You're going to want to run out of this ring because when it detonates, it will do a lot of damage. If you are slow to react, you can use Infernal Strike to get out of this, or use it to re-engage and gain the pain that it would provide. You're also going to want to look out for the spears falling from the sky. When they fall, they will do impact damage, and then also he will eventually cast an ability where he detonates all the spears. When all the spears detonate, they will send orbs of holy light throughout the battlefield, and it's something that you need to avoid. You can really think about the fight against Imperator in Heimdall. As you can see, the balls are very large and should be fairly simple to avoid. The last thing that we're going to need to look at is when he puts these glyphs above your head. You're going to want to run to the matching spot on the ground, and that will give you a buff that increases all of your damage done, healing done, and everything. It turns you into a god, basically. And that's all the mechanics to the fight. Once you get used to them, moving away from spears as they fall, jumping out of the circle that he has, re-engaging, dodging the spears when they explode, and avoiding the balls on the ground, and making sure you pick up the buff that you need, the rest of the fight is fairly simple to get through. Smart use of Infernal Strike will make this fight very simple for Vengeance Demon Hunters, and for the sake of brevity, I'll just speed up the rest of the encounter so you can kind of get a gist of it. I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Halls of Valor. It seems to be one of the most completed of the dungeons, and even if some of the mechanics aren't exactly new, there are certain elements to different fights that do make them more interesting. In some situations, trash will be more of a challenge than the bosses themselves, and because of this, you should just go into it planning for that. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.